You're watching Public Comment every Thursdays at 8 a.m. The live stream. Detroit is different and Bridge Detroit. Local politics of Detroit. All right, welcome back. Welcome back to another episode of Public Comment. Khary Frazier here with you today from Detroit is Different. And y'all know weekly we're talking a lot about municipal politics of the city of Detroit. And this is really anchored by an article. And really it's a notebook from Malachi Barrett of Bridge Detroit. Malachi, how are you doing today?
Good morning. I'm doing pretty good. I'm a little tired, to be honest, but I'm good. I'm great. I'm here.
Okay. All right.
We're here to talk about the news. We're here to talk about city councils.
Yeah, which it really wasn't a formal session yesterday, which was interesting per se. But we definitely are talking about an issue that eats up in Detroit streets all the time. So along with Malachi, we have Thomaesa Bailey of We Own Everything. Thomaesa, how are you today?
I'm doing good today. I first want to give a shout out to my mom. She's been sick and she had to have a procedure recently. So I just want to give a shout out to her. Hope that she is feeling better and on the mend. But other than that, feeling good. I'm ready to jump into the discussion.
Yes, and definitely shout out to your OG. She was the one and only person I think we've ever had in public comment history that was in crowd in person.
Thank you for that. Thank you for that.
The one and only audience member that's ever been present, but good vibes and everything, especially when we were talking transit and so much. So prayers up and best for that. Today's episode of Public Comments, we are talking a lot about Detroit. Construction projects lack Detroiters. This is an issue that's been going on as long as I can remember. Detroit's promise to prioritize local workers and publicly funding construction projects is failing drastically. 2024, not a single one of the 35 city tract developments met the executive order requirement that at least 51% of the labor hours be performed by Detroit residents. Despite millions invested in training and development, only 32% of work hours went to Detroiters. And that figure drops to 14% when union-affiliated workers are excluded. So with this being said, man, oh man, as I say, this has been one of those topics when we speak of a lot of the functionality in this show and many other topics of municipal politics when Detroit puts so much into the investment and partners with the private sector. The big sell is the fact that it's going to bring in jobs. And this even goes back to the Coleman Young era of wanting to make sure people got jobs. And people ain't getting the jobs. It's a lot of money spent in the fees, and those fees and those fines of not meeting that 51% requirement. It's almost like an added in cost. The upcoming interview with Council President Mary Sheffield, a mayoral candidate, is speaking about that. And Malachi was engaging on this very topic. It's like, what needs to change? She even uplifted. Whole time in council, this has been an issue. People know it's an issue. And this is why people get so upset when so many things come to council where they say like, hey, city, give us the money and we can hire the people, because we have not seen it. So even as much as like I'm rallying on my Pistons, shout out to the Pistons winning games and everything. And tonight, I think they're going to make it a game 7. But with that concept of a game 7, every time I'm in Little Caesars Arena, driving by Little Caesars Arena, I'm always thinking like, damn, so much Detroit money went into this. This is owned by the city of Detroit, and Detroiters weren't even building the damn thing. And that is not a good feeling, you know, to the point where I know a lot of people that's like, I'll never walk in foot of Little Caesars Arena. So it's issues like that. It's like, I love my Pistons, but it's like a weird stomach feeling. Malachi, I'm passing it to you first because you had a very good exchange with Council President Mary Sheffield about this. And it's such an issue. And it seems like it's only raised up at like bits and points. And this is one of those bits and points, but let's keep it uplifted.
Yeah. So this data came from, and this like stood out to me. I knew that we had been behind on meeting that executive order benchmark to have, 51% of the construction hours worked by Detroiters. I knew we were falling short of that. The Civil Rights Department has been monitoring this. There's an online dashboard. You can look at each individual project that qualifies for this rule and how far behind they are. It did shock me that none of the 35 projects tracked last year met the requirement. That was a little startling. It is interesting that this has been an ongoing conversation, and yet I don't think we've seen a whole lot of like change in the situation, like the overall kind of landscape, right? I mean, this executive order was created, in acknowledgement of a lack of Detroiters getting these jobs, and it created a fine that would, fund workforce training programs. I think, it was good to note there that the ARPA program, Skills for Life, Jumpstart, and Learn to Earn, are all ending in June. Those were paying residents to get a high school diploma to go back to school, to get into the workforce, to get, certifications. So that's, the loss of a pretty important tool to help address this. Detroit at Work and the Detroit Economic Solutions Corporation are both other tools the city uses to try to boost up the workforce. They have these like career training hubs, and I think every city council district has 2. Could be wrong about that. They all have at least one. But there's some challenges there with, the education downstream from that. You got kids coming out of DPSCD who aren't prepared. They don't have the reading and math scores. According to Detroit at Work, to qualify for some of the apprenticeships and the next kind of level of skilled training. So that's, an issue that we have to address. And I do think this is going to be, an important issue for the mayoral race this year. I mentioned Council President Sheffield. She was at an event last night with with 4 other mayoral candidates in the field, hosted by the FL-CIO.
Yep.
And they did talk quite a bit about union work and the lack of skilled trades. And, I think we're going to see a lot more attention on this.
Most definitely. And I got some points about just like the framing of that at IBEW Local 58. And even that room having so many union workers that they're all voting for who they're going to support. But the other reality and elephant in the room is a lot of those union workers don't live in the city of Detroit. Like the variables in this equation, as it also connects a whole lot to housing and opportunities, even in housing. Like some of this is just not like 2 + 2 = 4. Hence, it makes it so difficult. I'm gonna put the chart up first, and then Thomaesa, I'm bringing it over to you because these are the Detroit at Work by numbers. All right.
I mean, you see the average hourly wage there is about $17.58.
Yep. And we know the affordable house thing. So, as we piece that together, Thomaesa, what's your take on this? This has been such a key discussion about so many of these projects, because there are so many projects that Detroit is taking tax dollars and either abatements, going straight to the projects, diverting, like structures where we're supporting a lot of what's happening in development, but the jobs that it says it's going to provide, it's not providing.
Right. I mean, that's basically the issue, right? There are so many nuances to this, but the bottom line is that Detroit is engaging in a lot of development, right? We are, footing the bill. We're doing a lot of tax abatements. We're allowing developers to come into our city. And we are hoping that it's going to be of a benefit to the people who are here in Detroit, who obviously need to get these high paying jobs, who obviously need to be a part of this whole economic boom that we're seeing, but they're not. So this brought up a lot of things for me. It's like, so you have the company's perspective, and it's kind of a question of whether or not they just don't necessarily want to hire Detroiters, or Detroiters don't have the skills that they need. So they're just going to pay the fine and move on. But then we think, what do we need to do to upskill our citizens? What do we need to do as it relates to DPSCD? What do we need to do as it relates to getting folks into the skilled trade so that they can get up to those reading levels that they need to get up to in order to get these jobs? I mean, because at the end of the day, the bottom line is that this is an economic issue. This is an issue of cyclical poverty, where you have a lack of jobs, a lack of investment, and then you have that is going to impact families, right? That's going to impact whether or not they can be stable. That's going to impact whether or not they can have affordable housing that they can afford to buy groceries. And then if that household becomes unstable, then that young person is going to be unstable. They're not going to be able to learn, and it's just going to create a continuous cycle of poverty within our city. So we need to find a way to create some sort of pipeline for parents and young people to be able to upskill. And as we look at, some of the Detroit at Work and some of the other workforce development things going away, we're going to have to find a way to fill in that gap. What is that $1.9 million of fees going to go towards? How are we going to funnel Detroiters into these Detroit-based construction jobs? Because it needs to be Detroit for Detroiters. We need to figure out if the people are staying here, if they are paying taxes here, if they are available and have the skill sets to get these jobs, why are they not getting them? And how can we create a pipeline for them to get them? What do we need to do as policy people to make sure that happens? Because the poverty that people experience in our city is not sustainable, and I don't want to see us go towards a crisis. So we need to figure this out.
And the other piece in this, and this is what really makes it such a ball of yarn, because I can't think of another example, and like that cat playing with it, because some of these same challenges are just like so interconnected, right? So the other key in this is like, it's back to like, we need Detroiters. A lot of Detroiters end up in some of these positions, and then the first thing they're doing is they're moving out of Detroit because of some of those same other challenges that come with living in the city of Detroit, right? And what opportunities are there. So it's another Detroit Next. So it's like a lot of commercials for Detroit Next. You need to be watching Detroit Next. It's an episode with Sanzil Jenkins. It's very, very interesting from like a lot of like the concepts of social determinants of health, and social determinants of wealth and housing and many of those other things. Education is touched on as a social worker. She speaks to that, the full interview. And a lot of this I see as interconnected. As Richard Hosey said, many people are moving downriver. We're talking about like the Wyandottes, further downriver. It could be like even in like Brownstown, like people are moving east, like Clinton Township, Warren, like a lot of that welcoming. Richard Hosey said like some of those barriers, meaning like usually the race barriers of before, are not in some of these places. I go out to Macomb County and know a lot of folks now out in Macomb County that lived in Detroit their whole lives, have families that own homes here their whole lives. And now they're buying houses in the Clinton townships out that way, because this is the other variable too. When people are trained, go through those the courses and everything, and hence like the IBEW, Local 58, Union Town Hall about who's going to get the mayor's support. I mean, if I had to guess one for one, like I'm just throwing it out there, I would think it's probably 50-50 who lives in Detroit and who's not living in Detroit that are union skilled trade when it comes to a lot of the developers. Now, for like the SEIU, the workers that are more like in a service union, I'd expect them to live in the city of Detroit, right? But those service workers are the workers that aren't at back to that like wealth income gap disparity. So all of this challenge, it connects to like where people want to live and what attracts people to live. And now clearly many of the outskirts of Detroit and Metro Detroit, let's just put it like that, are welcoming in a lot of those Detroiters that do get trained, do have the education, did get skilled from whatever these talent pools are and measures and much of that, and they're looking to welcome them into their community. So that becomes a challenge too. So Thomaesa, how, it's like you can't tell a person to go through a training and say, look, you got to live here for 5 years, but what other incentives need to be connected to these courses so that when trained, when through the training, when executed, people stay in the city of Detroit as well?
Yeah, that's something that I think about a lot. How can we keep people here in Detroit? How can we entice people to come and live in Detroit? something that, makes people not necessarily want to is because of the high property taxes. We've talked about that a lot on this show. So what incentives can we provide to students who go away to college and want to come back? Can we provide them with some sort of housing incentive, some sort of job incentive, something like that? I think we need to create incentives for people to want to move to Detroit. I think we need to continue to figure out how to lower property taxes. I think we need to continue to try to figure out how can we raise other types of revenue so that the property tax and the income tax of resident Detroiters isn't necessarily funding everything that we're trying to do. Because this is an economic issue, right? The more money that I bring in and the less money that is going out in the form of taxes and other things, make house maintenance and things of that nature, because we know that our housing stock is a bit older here in the city, the more money that I can keep and that I can earn from this high-paying job that I have because I've been able to get those skills, that's going to cause me to be in a better economic position. And as I'm in a better economic position, I'm spending more money. I'm creating more sales tax and things of that nature. So if we can provide those types of incentives for folks to have them come back in the city, live in the city, invest in the city, work in the city, without having to spend so much of their hard-earned money just because they live in the city on taxes and things of that nature, then I think we can at least begin to look to addressing the problem.
And with that also becomes, like I say, it's more of a Metro Detroit thing where Metro Detroit is anchored by Detroit. But you've even uplifted this, Malachi, about like some of the money even going into these elections. A lot of it's not from Detroit, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it's a lot of people that are in the mix of what's happening politically in Detroit that can't even vote for what's happening in Detroit, but are definitely looking to influence so much of what's happening into Detroit, including this very issue. So this becomes, as a person that lives in Detroit, one of those other key issues. It's like, how much do you really care when you ain't even living here? One of the key things that a lot of Detroiters have. Shout out to Mo Dirty in this classic song, You Ain't From Detroit. You know what I'm saying? So it's like, that is another big question mark in all of this. Is so many people that are talking about Detroit, interested in Detroit, but it looks like you're extracting from Detroit because you're not even living inside the city limits, which intimately, I feel like you're solving the problem a whole lot differently when you're like so connected to it. But Malachi, speak a little bit on classic Khary, interesting question, but like this connection of like so much of this outside interest to solve these challenges, and these people aren't even here themselves.
Yeah, I mean, first of all, you're right. There's a lot of money that will be flowing into this mayoral race from outside the city. A lot of money already has come in through construction contractors, the owners of large construction firms that do business with the city and build our skyscrapers and all of that. So, yeah, it's interesting to see where that money's going to go and what the implications for policy are. Council President Sheffield, who was running for mayor, and we interviewed her, like you said, on Detroit Next. If I remember right, she was kind of saying that the current system of finding businesses that don't meet this benchmark has not really produced more workers. Basically, it hasn't really worked. And we're going to have to see, I think, what some alternatives would be. She wasn't like, we need to end this or anything, but, these fines are not creating the kind of job pipeline I think that we had hoped. Last night at the IBEW event, there was a lot of conversation about holding developers, holding businesses accountable for hiring union workers and hiring Detroiters, and that we have a lot of policies on paper, things like this, things like community benefits ordinances, that when larger projects come to town, we can negotiate to make sure Detroiters get the benefits. We have that on paper, but it's not being executed correctly. Some of the other speakers at that event, Solomon Kinlock, I think in particular, was saying, we don't have the people in place who are enforcing this, and we also lack some of the teeth on the policies themselves. So I think there's been, a wider acknowledgement that this isn't quite working, and I think there's an appetite to strengthen some of the rules. There's also, I think, a little bit of hesitation because anytime you require businesses to do something, it incurs some costs, and we're trying to really maintain this as a business-friendly city. So that's always kind of a tension point as well. But I do feel like we're entering, I don't know, it feels like the conversation is changing a little bit, in acknowledgement that we're not getting the results that we need. But to your point, these folks that are doing the project who don't live in the city, what is their commitment to hiring Detroiters, right? And how much of it is just purely, economics based? Do they even think about it at all? Do they say, it'd be good if we could hit this target, but we got money in the budget to pay the fine, so we'll just pay the fine and kind of move on, right?
And this is the other thing, like 2 points about that. And Thomaesa, I'm gonna kick this one to you, classic Khary, because this one's even more difficult than what I just pitched to Malachi. It's like the Spider-Man meme where like they're pointing at each other. So it's like the union workers are pointing at it's not even that. I don't know what meme this is, but the union workers are saying, look, you need to hire a union. I remember just the all of the anger of IBEW Local 58 even put up the billboard about the Godfrey being put over there on Michigan Avenue and not working union, right? But then it's like they're pointing at not hiring union, but Detroiters are pointing at the union and saying like, y'all not in Detroit in the first place and y'all not putting us in the mix. So it's like, this isn't as linear as a quick solution and quick fix, because it's back to like people with assets are leaving from Detroit, but coming back to Detroit to get more of their assets. So that's why I use the term extractive. That may be a little bit more hyperbolic, but it can appear extractive to the people like me that are in Detroit, that live here in Detroit, that's gonna be here in Detroit, So I'm gonna make it more plain for you. You and Malachi are a part of a very rare air of class of people that have bought homes in the city of Detroit recently, right? In that journey, what has it been like for you all? And then part two of that question is, how are your friends, young, bright, talented Detroiters, how are your friends responding in the response to them saying like, okay, let me go on and get the house next door to you? What's been that feel? Amazing.
Yeah, for me, so I love Detroit. I was gonna be 10 toes down for Detroit no matter what. My boyfriend is born and raised here, as you guys know, and we wanted Detroit to be home. So buying a home here was definitely his idea, and it was definitely like, we need to just be a part of our community. So that was something that was never going to be a question. But it has been difficult. I was just telling a story off camera that my basement flooded right recently, and I had to get that fixed, and that was $3,000, and that it costs a lot. But being a part of my community in Detroit, living where I live, and being a part of knowing the small business owner down the street, and being a part of the renaissance of this city has been something that has uplifted me. So I have been grateful for the opportunity to be here. But I understand that this experience is not one that is going to be the same for everybody who's trying to do this. And so I definitely recognize that, and I'm not, and I know that I'm speaking from a point of privilege, just being able to say that. So yeah, but see, that's the thing. That is why we need to create incentives. That's why we need to make sure that we, think about this from a policy perspective. I think Malachi was uplifting this. It's like, this is a classic policy on paper implementation type issue. And in public policy, we talk about this all the time. If you have a good policy on paper and it's great and it, is written so correctly and you got the quotas and the numbers and everything, but if it's not implemented correctly, if when the rubber meets the road, you realize that the numbers aren't working, that the people that you are trying to help are actually still not being helped because whatever reason, the company just says, we'll pay the fine, or, oh, we just don't want to do this. That is not a good policy. So you do have to go back to the drawing board at some point, right? Because not everybody is going to have the same opportunity. And so that policy is going to have to be there, and it's going to have to be in place, and it's going to have to be implemented. And it's going to have some teeth to it for you to make sure that the intended consequence is happening. And I just don't think we're there yet. And I think that's what needs to be the next step in this situation, right? Because not everybody is going to be able to be in the same position. So if the public policy can't be there, then we need to figure out how to fix that, right? And so that's what I love so much about Santil Jenkins. Just recently, she and a bunch of others did a supermajority forum, and she talked about that. Social issues are a lot of times can be solved because of good public policy. And if we are in a position to change it or fix it or put more teeth to it, then that's what we need to do, because we can affect a lot of these issues that way.
And I'm going to kick this question right back to you, Malachi, because you're in that boat too. Young, talented, skilled person that just got a home in the city of Detroit. What has that journey been like for you, and how have your friends responded in the train of following in your footsteps in that.
Yeah, I don't know. It was scary. Probably the first word. I feel extremely fortunate to own property, to own a house. I'm 31 right now, and probably 3 years ago, if you had asked me if I would have a house right now, I probably would have said no. What did really happen? I mean, I got lucky. My dad was in the Marines, so I had part of my college was covered through his GI Bill. So that saved me on some student loan debt that a lot of my peers are still dealing with. And I think that's been a big takeaway from me, not only with people that I know that bought houses earlier than me, but something to keep in mind for people that are still on that journey. The big factor in who has a house right now is who got help. Honestly, I think especially in the millennial generation, a lot of the people that I know that were able to buy houses before me, and I don't say this with any shade at all. People should accept help from their family and generational wealth we're trying to build in Detroit. This is what this is all about. But it's remarkably harder when you don't have family to help you out, and we had a little bit of help, so that was good. But it's a different, to Mesa's point, it's a different story with every individual person. It's a different story with the whole block, and we're in a neighborhood that is going through some changes, and we had some new people move in kind of around the same time. And it's interesting that me and my wife are in our early 30s. The people that bought the house next door to us at the same time we moved in are 20 years older. They lived in Macomb County. They'd always wanted to live in Detroit, and so they came down. Next to us is somebody that's been in the house for 50 years. Next to them is like an intergenerational family that's been there a long time and is kind of passed the house down. And now there's the youngest there's a couple with their kids there living with grandma and everything. So then on the same block, we've got land bank homes that are in the process of being flipped, as I probably talk about too much on this show. So yeah, I don't know what the takeaway is really. I mean, I dumbfoundedly managed to get a home, and I don't know how I did it, honestly, besides just getting kind of lucky. So
and see, and this right there where you said it, and it definitely will be particular and specific for each person. And as Thomaesa uplifted, it's going to take more of a social work lens and term, but a casework approach for the whole wraparound services. Shout out to long time, almost like auntie Sharon McPhail's approach towards this years ago with workforce development, because it's just a lot of factors that are going in within the policy, but this is all interconnected, because the reading, the housing stability, the job opportunity, all of it I see as connected, and it becomes so challenging because you're seeing the investment in development. And, I know that angers so many of the people I know and the people that definitely run with me, because it's man, we're seeing billions of dollars put into our city, but it's not helping the people we know. So what is going on? And that's why it can be so adversarial between some community organizers and advocates, and a lot of what's happening in development, because we're not seeing anything change in our communities. We're not seeing things change for the people we know. We are seeing people that do come in the community deal with some challenges, and if anything, it's going to be us that helps each other. Lord knows, you all know the whole water challenge that we had a couple weeks ago on my block, and I'm I'm filling up the Home Depot buckets in my basement because I was one of the houses to get water before a lot of the other people. And that's just, I'm glad that I have that rapport with my neighbors, but it's still back to this development that's happening in my community where I counted of the 28 workers I saw, they had one Black person working at the tree trimming company that was from Ohio. So 28 workers. And I know my community, as Black as it is, and it's becoming a lot more brown now too. 28 workers in my community that are doing work on my street that end up doing something that floods my street, where I'm solving the challenge connected to this and then climbing through all I need to climb through to resolve that. Shout out to Councilmember Calloway for helping with that, and everyone else, the fire department over here and the fire station. But that's still just not, that was not on the Monday to-do list of what I was planning to do. And then furthermore, it became a Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday filling up Home Depot water buckets for neighbors. Like, you know what I'm saying? And then, it's hundreds of millions of dollars that go into the Little Caesars Arena under the guise of we can hire the traders. And then even with that, they're like, we just gonna go in and pay the fine. So I think I've done enough soapbox on this challenge and issue today, and I'm sure we'll revisit it. I'm glad we got a chance to speak and dive a little bit deeper into this. You all gave a little bit more perspective just from personal story and all of the knowledge you all already bring to the table for this. But this is one of those key challenges for who's ever going to be in the position of executive as mayor next for the city of Detroit, and also for how that will work with council and the state of Michigan, because some of these challenges are, as they're Detroit challenges, they're challenges everywhere, because a lot of the other places are welcoming Detroiters because the Detroiters with those skills and with those talents are helping with some of these challenges that are happening out there. With that being said, Malachi, kick it off to you.
Come on down every week for the free City Council notebook. We got a double dose this week, because I also did a write-up of what happened at that mayoral forum last night. We've got a bunch of forums coming. I'm trying to figure out, should I do something about each of them? Probably, but it's going to be a lot. There's 2 more this week. So things are kicking off on the mayoral race, and we are also interviewing those candidates for Detroit Next. So definitely check that out. Our new episode with Santiel Jenkins is out, and we have already interviewed Mary Sheffield, and so that will be out soon as well. You can subscribe to that at bridgedetroit.com. You can go onto our YouTube channel, just search Detroit Next by Bridge Detroit, and it should show up. But these conversations are usually based on what happens at City Council, and I'm covering that for the Council Notebook. That is, again, a free newsletter that will show up in your inbox at least once a week, sometimes more, and breaks down everything the council did. The council did not have a quorum this week, so that's why we're not talking about any actions they took. There were 5 members who were off doing other things, and they had excused absences. So the council basically met and took public comment, and then said, you know what, we'll come at it next week. So more to come on what they're up to next week.
All right, Thomaesa.
Yeah, this was a great conversation. This is one of those issues, especially as somebody who speaks for the voice of the people and the voice of advocacy. This is one of those issues that we're going to hear so much more about. And speaking of social workers, social issues, especially in this day and time, are going to be the issues of the day. These pocketbook issues, these, chicken in every pot. Can I feed my family? Can I afford to do these things? These are going to be things that we continue to see, especially as the state of politics continues to go in this trajectory. So I did just want to uplift that, and I praise this show for being able to uplift those issues. Secondly, we own everything. We own everything. It's providing political education to the community, political consulting company that specializes in political education, hoping to drop some more city council candidate interviews as well. So you can hear from the mayoral candidates on Detroit Next. You can hear from the city council candidates, from me, being a more part of the legislative branch. So just hoping to be able to bring you guys some more of that information and continue to teach people about advocacy and help people get involved and get engaged in the political process.
All right, with that being said, Detroit is different. Detroit is different as you talk about candidates. Hey, got another candidate on Detroit is different. Even though if you've ever watched the full Detroit is different, it's a different type of interview. So with that, Fred Durrell is coming up, and Kevin Jones, Coach Kellogg, as I know him over there in East Pole Town, is coming up too, running in District 5. Looking for those finalized list of who's on the ballot, and we're going to get some other folks. Jonathan Barlow is already up and running on Detroit is Different, so check that out. Very interesting discussion about how tech connects to the city of Detroit and his vision for mayor and executive of what he would be. That being said, we close out this episode of Public Comment. Peace.
Wow. Right for Detroiters, y'all.
You're watching Public Comment, every Thursdays at 8 a.m. the live stream. Detroit is different and Bridge Detroit. Local politics of Detroit.